Welcome to Wait, Ask Me Another. While answers and advice often appear as the best solutions to ease our suffering, curiosity is truly the cure for all things that ail us. It is the one remedy others will openly accept, and once they start to experience its impact, they will stop you and request, Wait, ask me another.
So, Teresa, how often are you noticing lately people wanting so badly to just expand other people's perspective? If only they could see this.
Oh, I am noticing it all the time, Jenny. And one of the reasons that I'm noticing it more is that we've created entire industries around it. When we decided that knowledge was commoditized, then everybody wanted to have something to sell, right? And they could sell knowledge. So if you have a problem, my response is, oh, I will give you some knowledge that will fix it.
Oh, yes. And it takes me all the way back, exactly right where you said commoditize this, is that it takes me back to this story that I heard a bajillion years ago. And I like to call it going bananas. but, but this gentleman decided that if only this tribesman could see the city, it would open his eyes to all the opportunities that are available to him rather than narrowing his opportunities to what is right in front of him. So he takes him to the city and shows him the buildings, the streets, the people, everything. And then they come back and he's really excited for the tribesmen to share with his people everything he saw and experienced and what he could do with this. And so when he turns to him, the gentleman responds with, what I saw was this thing, they call it a wheelbarrow. And I could carry so many bananas in that it could provide so much more for everybody at once. And the businessman was so devastated because he's like, that's the story? That's what you saw?
Right. That's the interesting piece of this too, is that when we provide the solution for people or when we point them in the direction we want them to go, we are assuming that they will see what we want them to see out of the
Exactly.
solution. And that's not the case. That person didn't walk in with whatever your assumptions were, whatever your background or experience was. They didn't walk in with that. And so they're going to see what they need to see for themselves. So it's really funny that even in giving the solution or our answer, it still doesn't turn out. And then we're still upset, sometimes more upset than if we had just let the person figure out things for themselves.
Yeah, and I look at all these individuals that think that their role in the world is to help others, help expand perspective, help them achieve whatever it is that they are meant to achieve in the world. And yet they come in with these assumptions or conclusions, deciding already what should be rather than what could be.
Mhm.
And that's the whole point of even our podcast, is if we came in with curiosity versus that conclusion, we could multiply what is possible.
Oh,
And and can't we just ask people questions? And I think when we do, people want more questions.
yeah. Well, I think we underestimate the power of the questions. We want to do something powerful, right? Want to do something that will improve the world, or at least the world of the person in front of us. So this is a really keen point, I think, that I don't want to push past, is that we don't assume these things into people or just want to give our answers because we necessarily think that we are just better than them, right? There are people who think that they're just better than other people. I know that. But usually they rub people the wrong way. We don't usually we don't usually enjoy that person's presence after a while. We might tolerate them, but the meeting after the meeting is about how so and so is such a know-it-all, that type of thing. So there is the I know better than you, but the flip side we think is not as dangerous, which is um, I want better for you.
Yes.
right? It's just as dangerous as the I know better than you.
And yet it also can, even the way that you said it, and that's probably in their head, not how it sounds, but it does feel condescending,
Mhm.
is that you've decided what better is. And you never asked me what's my definition of that. And I really think that when we come from that place, while we think we are expanding people's potential and their story, are we actually limiting it because we're not curious about their story?
Yeah. Sometimes I like to do this thing where I like tack on the next chapter on the story, right? And so even in your story with the going bananas, so here's this disappointed businessman. I always think to myself, what if in like 5 years, because this tribesman found the wheelbarrow, it expanded his mind to think of like, what else can I do? Oh, you know what? We don't have a market. I think we should have a market. And who knows, maybe in 5 years, this man is the owner of a thriving business in the context where he feels comfortable, which is his village. And he's done things to help the village and to upgrade the village and to provide jobs for people in the village. And the village is thriving because he took from it what he needed to see, because he had his version of what he wanted his story to be, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
I also think like at the end it's the businessman who is disappointed. However, um, what I see people doing sometimes that is sad to me is that they will then articulate their disappointment to
Mhm.
the person, and that like it squashes the potential story, right? Because you just told that person their version of success, their version of who they want to become in the world, what they see as valuable in terms of resources and values and people and how they want to live their life is not acceptable.
Mhm. And is that part of their current narrative already? Is that if you have seen an individual pass up on opportunities over and over again, and then you come along and say, here, I'll show you. They just didn't show you right.
Right.
I'll show you the right way to open up these options for you. And because again, you didn't meet the person where they were at and you didn't ask them where they wanted to go, did you just push them back further? And now they have more information that they're sorting through that says, I'm not meeting other people's view of what's expected of me.
Right. And sticking right in that, the idea of I'm not meeting other people's view of what's expected of me. I want to emphasize and to invite our listeners or viewers to think about where personally have you experienced that, and where in your employment have you experienced that, because those are the two areas. Who I hang out with in my home and in my social life, and the 8 hours or so that I am on my job tend to be these two arenas where we really experience this. So for those who are leaders, I hear it all the time from my managers and my supervisors. I have to tell them, I have to help them understand. Well, telling them and helping them understand might not be the same thing,
Right.
and which one is going to be more powerful, because you can tell me and it's not mine. I'm just upholding what my boss wants or what my boss says, but helping me to understand by inquiring what's actually of interest to me, to understand what's necessary, what's getting in my way of the thing that we both want me to accomplish, right? Or even getting clear on what we both need me to accomplish. Uh, that is different than telling me.
Well, and even that statement, you said it twice, is I I just need them to understand where is your responsibility to, I first need to understand them,
Mm, mhm.
because how can they understand if I don't first take the time to say what's going on for you and what's important here? I was meeting with somebody that a person continuously wasn't following certain rules that the entire organization was following. And she said, I approached this person twice. I don't get why they can't see
Mhm.
that this is important. And I asked her, what have you asked her about what's going on and what's causing her to approach it differently? And she goes, why would I do that? And I said, well, what's the backstory? It,
Right.
and she said, I don't know, but she gets so defensive that I can't even get any further in the conversation. And and I s- and so we had a conversation around, that your your approach to it is putting her barriers up because she feels like she has to protect something, and going in with curiosity of what is it that is going on for you right now? What do you want to happen? And then how can we meet each other there? So then we can both move forward
Mhm.
towards something that is common and helps not only the person, but then the person feels like they have control over how to influence others.
Right. Well, and even in the example, she's constantly, the leader or manager is constantly working at a deficit, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't know what is putting her hackles up. I don't know what is making her raise up in defensiveness. Well, simply repeating the same thing is not going to get you that insight of that information. We talked a little bit in preparation for this about the fact that sometimes we have that person, I think, is a leader who is searching. We have some people who are like lazy leaders. And when I say leaders, I mean leaders at any level, right? Whether you're just like helping out the team and you happen to be the point person, or you're the head CEO honcho, right? We have some people that will say, oh, well, I did my job. I told you what to do. Now I get to walk away.
Mhm.
Right? So there is the lazy leader, but there is also the leader who just doesn't have as much information. But I find that both of them have this interesting phenomenon in which they say, well, the person, I told them how to do the job. I told them how to get the job done. But as a trainer, I look at that and I say, no, you told them the tasks. You told them what to do. As a coach, I want to say you need to investigate from them how they want to do it
Exactly.
and the things that are inside that will actually motivate them and encourage them to say, yes, I'm going to get up, I'm going to put on my clothes, and I'm going to come and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this in this way. Right.
Well, I
Hmm.
think I think that how piece also is that we have an assumption that there is a certain way
Hmm.
to do it. And so we push our ideas, our values, not ever checking in to say, is there a different way to get to that outcome? Is there maybe even a better way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think Terza goes all the way back to your version of the next chapter.
Right.
And that's that the tribesman did not enter the story where the businessman wanted him to, yet it allowed for a better outcome. And that's really what, if you're committed to, I just want them to have a great story, a great life,
Hmm.
can we check in to say, am I pushing maybe outdated ideas or my ideas or my way of viewing it on somebody? And where else could I inquire of what else is here to do or how to do things versus this is how you do it.
Right. And I know that I harped a little bit on the business side of it, but this really is universal, right? For the entrepreneur who is trying to get started, where am I pushing even myself because I've got this idea that this is the way to do it to get success. Um, and what have I not questioned? Or
Mm,
for the parent who wants to help their child do well in school, or the friend who sees their friend going down a precarious path and wants to save them. Where are we pushing instead of inquiring? Uh, and could we see an entirely new something emerge for that individual if we stop assuming that what we are pushing is the right thing and we simply start asking them?
Yeah. And I that's what we invite each of you to consider is this week to be observers, to be curious of your world rather than conclude within your world is where am I pushing things when I could be inquiring? And if you shift that, what else can happen inside of that?
And if you have trouble figuring out where you're being a pusher, one of the best ways is to ask yourself, what pushes my buttons?
Mm,
Because it's
yes.
amazing how often we do what is exampled to us, right? So other people push our buttons and we don't even realize that we go out and we do the same thing to somebody else. That's a fantastic place to begin looking for, oh, am I being a pusher rather than an inquirer? Um, hmm, how could things be different if I just did the experiment of, instead of saying, I think you should, and instead asking, well, what's here for you right now that you really need to see? What's coming up for you?
And
To
if you
that,
need additional questions, we will have a resource out on the website that you can download. But what we invite you to do is just for the next week is be curious, ask questions and see what happens.
yeah, that curiosity resource guide is full of questions that you can ask yourself. So you don't even have to come up with them on your own. We encourage you to go out there, download that, and we definitely will look forward to seeing you in the next conversation.
So Terza, for you, what are you going to be curious about this next week?
Oh, that is a good question. Let me think here what's coming up. I have a few situations where people have tried to feed me what somebody is like. They're like, oh, you're going to meet with this person and this is what they're like. And I really need to check my assumptions at the door and just be curious and let them tell me who they are and what's important to them.
Excellent. All
How about
right.
you?
I have a client that I'm meeting with that I already have these conclusions of what will happen. And I really need to just sit in the space of what could happen.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to hold you to it. We're going to have to talk about this.
Sounds good.
Okay.